Welcome to Bigfoot Society. If you have Bigfoot activity to report from the same areas discussed in this episode, please reach out to me directly after this episode. And if you'd like to be on the podcast to discuss a personal Bigfoot encounter, please reach out to me directly at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Do you wish there was more Bigfoot Society to listen to every week? Well, there is now. If you become a supporting member over at Patreon, you get a special members-only episode every single week on Wednesdays, and sometimes even more episodes. Head on over to patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society. And now let's get on with the show. All right, Bigfoot Society, we've got the privilege of talking to Michael today. Michael's an individual that reached out to me through email about some interesting things that he's had happen over the years, a few encounters that he would like to share. So welcome to the show, Michael. How's it going, man?
Good, Jeremiah. Thank you, sir. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. We just got through a crazy Iowa blizzard, and we're crossing our fingers that this next weekend doesn't do the same. So, it's always a good day when I'm able to talk to someone who's had a encounter and kind of work through it with them. So, I want to make sure that you have the time to share what you have brought today, Michael. So I'm going to go ahead and give things over to you. And go right ahead, my friend.
Yeah, it happened in 1976. The only reason I know the year was it was the bicentennial, and that was a huge, that was on the radio nonstop, and the fireworks were excellent that year. I think whether it's through the eyes of a child, the fireworks were amazing. So, and I went to this dude ranch about 3 years in a row. And I think this was the last year, but that's the only reason I would remember the year is the bicentennial. The weird thing is, to me, it happened in Nebraska. And, we used to go to Lake Okoboji all the time in Iowa. So I feel for you in the winters. They can get really, really mad in the Midwest. But it just seems really strange that my encounter happened in Nebraska where, there is a lot of woodland, but it is predominantly open plain. And this was back in the 70s. Omaha is so much bigger now. But once you get to the outskirts, it's pretty much open fields. And, of course, you have a ton of wheat fields and cornfields. Anyways, the dude ranch, back in the 70s, parents let their kids do what they did, and hopefully they survived through the summer, and they didn't mind dropping their kids off somewhere for a week or two. I think it was the last summer I was there, and the first thing I remember is, and when I say dude ranch, it wasn't like a huge impressive cabin made of logs. It was a basic cinder block outfit. It's amazing what you remember from your childhood. I could still draw it on paper. It was real basic. It was a rectangle. One side was for the boys. The other side was for the girls. And then in the center is where we would eat and play games and have dances and things like that. The first memory I have of something just being a little off was I was talking to the owner's son, and it was towards the evening, and we had just gotten out of, they had an above ground pool, and we had just gotten out and we were drying off. And he was talking about weird things happening, and he was really vague about it, but the sun was setting, and he just said there were odd occurrences going on. And I didn't get much out of him, but for some reason that conversation from decades ago stuck with me. And I don't know if it was just the conversation or something else, but I had a real strong feeling of dread that came over us. It shouldn't have been there because we were right in front of the building, and their house was probably 50 feet where they lived from the building. So it's not like we were in the woods, but for some reason, and to this day, I still don't know why this sense came over me, but it's like, and I know this is in my mind as a kid, but it's like it got darker, quicker, the woods seemed more ominous, and after a few minutes, that feeling subsided and everything was good. When you're 8 years old, a lifetime ago, when you're 8, you don't tend to keep on subject for long. And changing the subject after a few minutes, it went away, but I do remember that. Probably the leading up to the event, pardon me for a moment. One night, and I don't know how long I had been there. I think it was probably towards the end of the 2-week stay. I think it was 2 weeks. I will always remember this for the rest of my days. In the middle of the night, one of the girls came yelling and screaming into our side, saying she saw a big, ugly face in the bathroom window. Now, when I describe the bathrooms, they're real basic affairs, toilet, sink, and a shower. But the window was placed high enough so no one could peer in. I do remember the windows being pretty high off the ground, and I'll go into the topography in the back of the building in a minute. But she came in, and you always heard people say white is a ghost. I have never seen anyone white. It's strange to see when all the color has been drained from their face. And she came in and she was just freaking out. And my first thought was, well, she's trying to get one over on us guys. Kids, you do stuff like that. And then I paused for a second and I was studying her, and she was scared. She was shaking and white. And she just said there was a big, ugly face in the window. And, we were like a beehive. We're all up. We went into their side. We shouldn't have, but we did. We went into the bathroom, didn't see anything. I don't remember smelling anything either. And for some strange reason, none of us went outside. We didn't hear anything, no noise, nothing. And we got her settled down, and we went to bed. And I guarantee you one thing, when we all woke up the next morning, first thing we did, and I don't know why we did this, but we went outside to the back. And being 8, 6 feet seems tall, but I would, and this is a memory that's like 48 years later. And I know memory is not, written in stone or steel. But we went to the back, and behind the building, the ground slopes down fairly quickly from the back of the building. And to me, being 8, we put our hands up, and we were nowhere close to getting to the window, nowhere close. First thing we noticed were the muddy handprints. I don't remember it raining. It may have. But there were muddy prints on either side of the window. And from what I remember is they were really big. And what really got me is the thumb was misplaced. What I saw, the thumb was a cross between a human and a chimp. The thumb was further back on the palm than a human's is. It was an opposable thumb, but that got me, the size. And we kind of marveled at that. And like most kids that are 8, 10, 12, there were all ages there. We quickly went on, with the Dude Ranch things. And one of the things the Dude Ranch had, which I really loved, my mom won a horse. And my whole childhood was being around horses, caring for them, being in the stable. So I knew horses fairly well, and they had horses you could ride. And I did it so many times I could, even to this day, decades later, I could still put a saddle on a Western style. The only thing that got me is I had to learn that when you saddle a horse, they'll puff out their chest because I don't think they like the saddle being tight. I wouldn't want to be saddled up and have my lungs, clenched. And what they would do is we would go on this, so it was like a 4-day trek. It was a 2-day trek out. We'd camp, we'd eat with the supplies we had, we'd gather firewood, and then 2 days back. And it was a hard ride. And man, there is no pain in riding a horse like 8 hours a day. that'll tear you up. And the corral was right behind the building, and they had like probably 12 horses, and they had a large property, and the horses were pretty well trained, and they would usually mass, in the morning to feed and water. When the girl saw the face, I do recall not a sound coming from the horses, which was strange, because they usually kept them, most of them in the corral, because a lot of us like to go ride. So anyways, we gather our supplies and we're going on our trip. And it was, July 1976. First night was fine, no issues, no problems at all. And the second night is kind of a paradigm shifting event. There's few events in a person's life that will affect you, like the birth of my son, falling in love for the first time. There are moments that define you. This moment was just as impactful as those were, but not in a good way. And my encounter happened on the second night out. We had a campfire going. There were probably about 10 to 12 of us. I think there were about 2 or 3 counselors, the rest kids. And we were in an open field, but we were right next to a wooded area. And we were bedding down for the night. And it was the strangest thing. I was in a deep sleep, and I just happened for some reason to wake up. And I've always been, that's the only superpower I have, is I'm a light sleeper. If someone opens the door, I'm instantly awake and aware of what's going on. But it's like I woke up, stood up, and immediately knew where to look. And at first, I saw someone coming down a hill. In the South, we call them haulers. And it's just the low point between 2 hills. And it was summer, clear sky, a lot of moonlight, a lot of stars. There was a lot of ambient light. And I saw someone walking down the hill. And I thought, yep, I caught you. I was certain it was one of the counselors out there to scare us. They love to do that to us, so they were really good at it. And I'm standing up, surrounded, the campfire's, it's got embers going, but it's pretty much dead. I stand up, and for some reason, I watched, but I didn't yell, didn't say anything. And I thought it was a counselor, and it stopped. And that's when I realized something is really off about this. The first thing I noticed were the arms. The arms were way too long for a person. That was my first hint that, something ain't right. And second thing I noticed was hair all over its body. And we, as we're standing staring at each other, it was going down the hill, and when I stood up, it stopped. And it's facing me, and its shoulders are hunched forward a little bit, and it's swaying from side to side. And I'm like, first I'm thinking, who does that? I don't know of anyone who does that. That's the most abnormal thing. We're staring at this thing, and I am in utter shock. I can't say fear. It was utter shock. The body, it looked like it was thin, like not thin, but it was like a basketball player, but thicker than that. It wasn't the Incredible Hulk you hear so often about. This one was much thinner. The legs were bent a little bit. It was hunched over, and it was just swinging its arms from side to side. The color, I don't know if it was dark red, dark brown, or black. The only thing I saw was a perfect profile of it. And just the way it swayed was so eerie. There was no eye shine, no smell. The one interesting thing to me is the horses did not have a problem. And I still can't explain that. I would think something like this would unnerve every animal in the area, but it didn't. And we're just staring at each other, no eye shine. And I was just rooted to the spot, and I was in such shock. All I had to do was yell out, and I would have had 10 or 12 people up around me immediately. I could not move. My body was frozen, and we're just staring at each other, and I feel honestly like it was for like 2 or 3 minutes. And I was so mesmerized. It's like this thing I had tunnel vision, and this thing had my full attention. The rest of the world didn't exist. And I was rooted to the spot like a tree. I couldn't utter a single word. And it keeps swaying. And again, going back to the body, sorry, I'm jumping around a bit. The torso is a bit longer than a human's. So besides the long arms, the hair everywhere, and the swaying, another thing was the legs seemed to be a little shorter than I would have expected on a person, and the torso was more elongated. And it wasn't skinny. I would say it was real solid, like if you had an elongated chimpanzee. The head, it had fur or hair on it. I didn't see the conical head. I didn't see any ears. And we just stared at each other for 2 to 3 minutes. And this thing walks down the slope of the hill into the holler and disappears behind thick brush. And I don't know how long I was standing up, but eventually I laid down. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. And in the morning, I didn't say a word because I didn't want to be teased or made fun of. That was, as an 8-year-old, that was my biggest concern was that. So we saddle up the horses, and we're heading back. And this part, I'm not sure what to make of it, but we went by a really old shack. It was a really old house. Part of the roof had fallen down. It was broad daylight. Oh, and the other thing is when, before we took off, I saddled the horse and I went to the holler, and there was such thick brush. I do remember thinking, how could anything go through that without making any noise or getting bogged down? The brush was real thick, but I didn't hear any footfalls or anything. So we're heading back. And this point, I'm not sure if my brain is playing tricks on me or not because I was so spooked. But we went by an old shack. The windows were out. And due to where the sun was in the sky, the inside of the house was really dark. And we were probably like, I don't know, 80 feet from this old beat up shack, house, whatever you want to call it. And as we passed it, I really got the impression that there were like 3 kind of grayish white hairy forms in there. And all I could see were the backs, and heads were bobbing up and down like you would see a person eating. But I guarantee you there was no table, in that shack. And that really threw me. And about that time, my horse bolted and wouldn't stop. It must have gone for a solid half mile, and it stops right in front of a thorn tree and throws me in the thorns. So I don't know if that's tied in, if that was my mind playing tricks on me. But the horses were well trained, well trained enough to where the owners felt comfortable enough having young kids on them. One thing, to go back a little bit, is the morning we were supposed to go on this, little 4-day trek, all the horses had jumped the stable. And it took us hours to go out in the woods and bring them back. And I'm certainly not, the world's finest equestrian, and I'm certainly no horse whisperer. But that just seemed like really odd behavior to me, that all the horses in a corral would jump out. And the height was pretty, it was pretty high. In my mind, they were motivated to get the heck out of Dodge. So that's about it for the horse behavior. Anyways, we get back to camp, and what's really odd to me is the rest of my trip there, I don't remember being afraid. It's like the whole thing was just gone. I don't know if it was a defense mechanism. I think it was. But during the rest of my time there, we were in the woods a lot. I didn't worry at all. And, camp ended, went back home. Years go by. We moved to Missouri. I went deer hunting. I fished all the time. Didn't have a single problem. And it wasn't until decades later in Arizona that everything came back. And we were in Sedona, Arizona, probably one of the most beautiful places on the planet, I think. The Red Rocks, really beautiful. And me and a girlfriend at the time were staying at, kind of like a bed and breakfast, like a nice hotel. Well, they had the Red Rocks and a lot of pine trees, and it was summertime, and we went down a series of stairs that had a lot of switchbacks because it was a tall, steep hill. And at the bottom, there's a hammock for two. And we're just laying there, just enjoying the night, warm summer night, a lot of ambient light. You can hear the water on the creek going by, very, very peaceful and relaxing. And the most embarrassing thing, while we were there, I just suddenly, this is like 25 years later plus, we're sitting in the hammock just looking up at the stars, and I just had this overwhelming feeling like, oh my God, we're going to die. And I have never been so panic-stricken as I was in that moment. And I told her, we got to go now. We got to go. And that was the longest flight of stairs I've ever taken in my entire life. The feeling of fear and impending doom was totally overwhelming. It was pure fear response. And we got back into the room, and I calmed down, and for some reason, everything flooded back. And I just paced around. She sat on the bed, and I told her exactly what happened. Thank God, she believed me. Because that was, really embarrassing. You're out to have fun, you're young, and then to wig out like that. But she was understanding, which I appreciated. And it's like, I don't know why that particular moment, since I had been out in the woods hunting and fishing so often, to this day, I would love to know why it took that particular time for that triggering event to happen. Because I had been out in the woods camping, growing up in small town Missouri, that's what you did back in the 80s is hunted, fished, and cruised, and that was it. So I don't know why that environment triggered it, but it did. And I immediately started to convince myself it didn't happen. And I tend to go with Occam's razor. The simplest solution is more often than not the correct. That's the way to go. And that's pretty much served me well in life. So I thought, okay, nightmare, false memory, imagining it, misidentification. And I literally spent years trying to convince myself that this didn't happen. And it was like a major war going on inside my brain. I was just utterly doing everything possible to convince myself it didn't happen, but I know it did. I didn't talk about it to anyone for probably another 20 years. And, when I did, I immediately got judged, ridiculed, and shot down. It's like, everything's a deer bear. I'm like, I don't know of many bear in Nebraska, in the 70s up until now. Or they just blew it off. And that includes family. And some of the family were much harder on me than anyone else. I really got mocked for it. So I learned to, be quiet about it. I don't know at what point in time in my life I finally was able to accept, okay, this did happen. And ever since I could remember it, I haven't gone hunting. I haven't gone fishing, camping, hiking. My encounters were not epic. They were not violent, but they left a mark, and it took my joy away, or part of it, because I would respectfully suggest to everyone listening, and this may sound hypocritical, enjoying nature and getting out of the rat race you can have the most wonderful, amazing moments of your life. And it's all very simple. You're enjoying nature. You're out with friends. That was taken from me, and I feel really weak-minded and feeble that it's affected me so much when, it wasn't like 10 feet away. It was like 60 feet away. I couldn't make out the face, but it was in perfect silhouette. And from that moment forward, I watched a ton of stuff on YouTube, TV. Pretty much everything I watch is usually Sasquatch related. And, years passed, that relationship ended, and me and my son lived in Phoenix, Arizona for quite a while. And then we moved to a small town in Georgia. And we've been here for several years now. It's a really small town called Sylvania, and I am surrounded by woods, but I had gotten used to incorporating this into my mind, and I was getting more comfortable. And when I say getting comfortable, I wouldn't run as a 50-ish-year-old man to the front door to my car at night. That was like a big deal for me. I know it wasn't, but for me it was. And then so things were going pretty well. And then this next event that happened, and the only reason I know this is on my Facebook, I was going back, and it was on February 14th, I commented on this. So I know it was winter, and it was another sunny day. It was, winter, so it was cold, but the sun was out. And standing out front of my yard, I'm surrounded by trees. Georgia, a lot of forest land. And I'm looking to the left by the propane tank, and I see two furry legs from like the knees down, walking from left to right through the brush. And my jaw dropped, and just like the last time, I turned towards this thing. In both encounters, there were no smells, no sounds, nothing. It was like stealth mode. But what got me, so I see these, and these were black. This was black hair. It didn't seem to have massive muscular legs, thighs, from the knee down. But I clearly saw it through the clearing in the brush. And it is the strangest thing. It takes a few steps and then it stops, and I can see the legs turn to face me. And if I had looked up, I probably would have seen more of it. I'm actually glad I didn't. But my honest opinion is it was like, oh, the ugly, hairless pink monkey sees me. And it immediately turns around and runs back the way it came. But it took off with a burst of speed instantaneously. And I wish I would have had a device that could have timed this thing, because it took 2 or 3 steps and then it was a literal blur. I'm not saying it disappeared. In my 2 encounters, I did not have anything. I've heard about the war of the woo. Some people think they're supernatural. Who am I to tell anyone their experience? But in my opinion, I think they're more supernatural. I think they're so adapted to their environment, and they're so adverse in general, to us noticing them, that they're able to hide really well. And I think they have strength and speed that moments of high stress, and I know what those high stress moments are like, that I could easily perceive that it just disappeared, but I think it just took off with such a burst of speed. Now, what's really weird is, I've incorporated this memory into my psyche, and I'm, doing okay, and then this happens. And then, good Lord, then the house slapping starts. This was like 2 to 3 nights later. It always happened in the middle of the night, and it always happened in my son's room. And it wasn't really loud, but it was a pretty good impact on the side of the house. And if I would make one suggestion to anyone visiting Georgia, is do not go to someone's house between 2 and 3 a.m. in the morning and slap their house. Because the gun culture is big here. I've got guns. It's a very polite and general, civilized, culture. But when it comes to your house, they're going to shoot first, and they're not going to ask questions. They'll answer questions from the cop when the coroner picks you up. And I was like, my first thought was, well, we've got a deranged deer or something that's repeatedly slapping the house. And eventually, and I don't know why it took me so long, but eventually I called the cops. And a cop came out, and I did lie to the cop. I got to put that out there. I told the cop a few days ago I saw someone in a ghillie suit. I only saw it from the knees down, and it was a black ghillie suit, which would make no sense. If you want to hide in the brush, black is not going to do it in Georgia. He had his flashlight. He searched the area, and he didn't see anything. I didn't expect him to. But and I don't know how many nights this had gone on before I called the cop. But was really interesting. I was like, and I asked the cop, listen, I feel threatened. I've got my son and a bonus son I'm helping to care for also, I feel threatened. That to me, that's an aggressive display. Am I okay to shoot? And the cop said, well, you got to feel like you're in danger. But if you feel like you're in danger, you can, but just try to exercise good judgment. And I'm talking about the house being slapped. What was real interesting is the cop said, what I would suggest is getting a game cam or a couple of them, and we've got 2 bushes on either side of the house. And if you position the cameras right, they'll point over the yard into the wood line. And he said, you need to get some game cams and put them up, and maybe it'll stop. And I just thought, you know what? I know what I'm talking about, and I think you know what I'm talking about too. I was really dancing around because in a small town, the speed of light has nothing on the gossip mill in a small town. It exceeds the speed of light by a dozen. And I didn't want to be a laughing stock, so that's why I lied and said it was a guy in a ghillie suit. But I thought that was real interesting. He suggested the game cam, that may stop it. And I was like, I think we're on the same wavelength, but neither of us are going to cop to it. Pardon the pun. And my take on it is, and I have no proof of this, I think it was a juvenile possibly, and I think it got ticked that I saw it, and it decided to slap the house for a number of nights, just, I don't know what these things are, but I think it wanted to get a rise out of me. And another thing that happened, since I'm such a light sleeper, and I'm a sofa sleeper, I haven't slept in the bed for years. I don't know why I love sofas so much. But like right now I'm looking out, I've got quite a few windows in the living room, and I'm looking in the yard. There were several nights where I would wake up to feeling the impact of heavy footfalls on the ground, like real heavy. But what's strange is I felt the impact, but I didn't hear anything. And I'm not saying there's anything supernatural involved. I don't know. But there were several nights in a row where I was waking up by what I felt the impact on the sofa as I'm sleeping, and it immediately woke me up. And time has passed since then. I had one friend, her name was Nora. She since passed due to COVID, and we were friends, and I told her my story, and she handled it well. She said, Michael, I have no doubt what you experience, you believe you experience. And I thought, you know what, that is perfect. She said, I wasn't there, so I cannot tell you if what you saw was an actual event or not. But I thought there is no better politically correct answer to give someone than that. Just to say, maybe it's possible. And then time goes by, and my current girlfriend, I hit the pay dirt with her. She is amazing. The only thing I question her on is why she is with me. I really do. But I told her about the subject, and she was into it also. I was like, man, I hit the mother load with this. This is awesome. And she told me she had an encounter. And it's just amazing that when you talk to people, how it will set off a memory. Or, someone will say, yeah, this happened to me, or this happened. You never know. It could be someone, giving you a total raft because you're talking about your experience, but maybe they're in denial of what they saw or what they experienced. But my girlfriend had to me, this was a real horrific encounter. She lives hours north of here, and I think she's been in Georgia her whole life. but she was in, I think, the living room, and she noticed a window, and two red eyes were looking in on her. And she was little, and she immediately freaked out. Who wouldn't? You know, glowing red eyes are not something you psych yourself up to see or prepare for. She ran to her room and told her sister, and her sister came out, and sure enough, it was totally dark, but she saw two burning red eyes just looking around. And they just huddled in their room until I think their parents were out. I think, I don't get the story wrong, but they were scared, and I think she told her dad, and I think her dad reasoned it off. And her dad sounds like a really solid guy, so I don't think he was ignoring her. I think he was just, we all have our view of reality, and we try to, put the square in the square-shaped hole. And I don't know why I asked this, but I always remember from the Leggett Creeks, that famous saying, he always follows the creek. And I asked her, I'm going to guess you had a creek or a river close by you. Is that right? And she was like, yeah. So it's really amazing to me that you can talk to people, and a number of times they'll have experiences. I've got, if you don't mind, I could tell you a real quick one in Ohio of someone I never expected to talk about, if that's okay. It's a bit more grim.
Sure.
Me and my son lived in Statesboro, Arkansas, and it seems we get all the strays. So he has a friend, and, family life isn't that good, so we take him in, and I'm talking to his mom, and the subject came up, and she related to me an experience they had. They were in Ohio. I can't remember where. I wish I could, but I can't remember the name of the town. They were on a property, and the wood line, abutted the property, within 10, 20 feet. And it was evening, and they had horses, and the fence for the horses came up pretty close to the house, and all the horses were there. The dog just had some pups. They were all sitting out enjoying the evening, and they were looking down a well-worn trail, and they caught a perfect silhouette of something huge and monstrous standing up. All they could say was it had black hair, and the fear hit them, and she just said, "Quick, get the dogs in the house. Get in the house." They get in the house, and they notice all the horses immediately tear off for the other end of the fence line. And they didn't even want to look and see what this thing was or know more about it. She said it was absolutely huge, really tall, dark hair, limbs were huge. And she said that a number of days later, nothing happened at her house, but some friends of theirs had some chicken farms, and what was happening is they were losing dozens or scores of chickens, and something was getting into the I don't know, modern chicken farming techniques, but I know they have large buildings they usually keep them in, and they said their neighbor was complaining because they would come out in the morning, and he would have dozens of chickens all around, and with their necks ripped off or the necks always mangled. Nothing was eaten, but it was everywhere. So that was another instance. I'm like, you just never know what you may hear by talking about it, and hopefully it made her feel a little less nuts about their encounter, because I do think talking about it is a good thing. And that's brought me up to the here and now, and I'm talking to you.
Michael, thank you for sharing what you've experienced over these years. It's some really fascinating accounts. As we were talking before the interview, I don't hear a lot from Nebraska, and that is just a really interesting account that you shared. And even though, you were saying, it's not super scary or whatever, the thing I tend to focus on is that these encounters are occurring to just normal people in normal situations. For you, you were 8 years old at a dude ranch in Nebraska, kind of like in a summer camp type setting on a horse trip. And there it happened. It's very, very interesting stuff. Are you able to share? Was it more the eastern side or western side of Nebraska, or?
You know what? I have spent forever. It's the $1,000,000 question, Jeremiah. I have spent so much time perusing the internet because about 2 miles away, we'd walk there. They had a rebuilt Western town. It was a few built buildings, but they had a saloon the kids would go in, and they had soft drinks, ice cream. And I have looked at every picture of every small Western town and recreation, and I cannot find it. It's lost to the sands of time. All I know is my parents must have really wanted to get rid of me for 2 weeks because we were in Omaha, and it was like, I'm going to estimate like a 4-hour drive. And even though Omaha is pretty open, there is woodland. And I could see where these things could travel at night, bed down during the day and not be seen, because there is a lot. There's open land, but there's a lot of it sparsely populated. So all I know roughly, and I've even scoured maps, hoping to find trace of something that happened, God, 48 years ago. God, I'm 56. I'm old. And I cannot find anything on it.
Now it's a mystery that listeners can try to solve. Is where's the missing dude ranch in Nebraska that would have been about a 4-hour drive from Omaha, and the time frame. So yeah, this could be very interesting.
I've looked at dude ranch photos. I've tried to pull up dude ranch 70s, Omaha, and or just Nebraska. The building itself wasn't big, and it was cinder block. I don't know if the land's been cleared. It's been decades later. But if I knew where it was, I would literally save my money and take a trip just to go back there. And I have no idea why I would engage in like a 20-hour drive. But for some reason, I guess it would just be completing the circle. It's like,
yeah,
I'm still here. And my encounter wasn't violent, thank God. There's a lot more hair-raising stories, but I do think it does leave an indelible mark on each person, because it is a really paradigm-shifting event. As I said, the birth of my son, one moment, your worldview is facing south, and the next minute, your worldview is north. And incorporating that, for me, has probably been the biggest challenge. I don't doubt myself anymore. I know it happened. I would just hope all your listeners would realize, and I don't think I'm special. I wasn't chosen to see this. Honestly, I wish it didn't happen either time, but it did. I would just hope that they would feel comfortable to come forward and talk about it, because it has been cathartic, talking about it. It really does help.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because that was actually something that I was gonna ask you is, that you've been through so much ridicule and people mocking you, and even close family members have been the worst. And why start sharing now? But you just answered yourself. It's very helpful
Yeah,
in your personal situation to go through it.
and I've always told my son, and this is a bitter pill for everybody, but I think everyone, grasp this concept. Just because someone is blood does not mean they're family, and just because they're not blood does not mean they cannot be family. Does that make sense?
That's one of the that's one of the best lessons you can learn, to be honest. Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
and it took me decades, but I am the smartest dumb person out there. I'm very well book read, but that's about it. For practical application of knowledge, I'm a total loss.
Hey, I'm
But
I'm right there with you, friend.
I'm really curious about your thought on this. And it's the $1 million question everyone asks. What, because your knowledge is a lot broader than mine. What do you think these things are? And I know there's
Yeah.
a million people have a million different answers. There's no right one. There's no experts. And if someone claims to be an expert, please run for the hills. There's too many of them out there. But I'm just curious, and I don't mean to put on the spot. I hope it's okay to ask that. I'm just curious. To me, they're flesh and blood, and they're not to be trusted. Um, I really don't like how they seem to take an interest in children, and I've heard enough negative encounters to where they're out there. My experience is they're flesh and blood. That's all I know, but I would not trust one as far as I could throw one, which is no.
It's a really interesting question. It is the thing that does always get brought up, and it's so interesting because as you get involved with things and maybe start to go places and experience things and read and talk to people, this can all change. But I would say right now, I am looking at it through it is a physical being, but that has some really interesting abilities that science might not know how to wrap its mind around, except for if it's fringe science. And that can change in the future. As I'm going through things, but if you're to ask me today, which you are, that is what is going to be said. Now, I can hear what you're saying there. It's so interesting. There's so many stories and accounts out there, and you do have things that are similar to like what you said, but on the other hand, there are also some accounts where you have the young child that was found after being alone in the woods for days, and says something to the effect of the kind
The
giant
bear,
teddy bear, saved me. And
yeah,
that kind of
and
thing makes you wonder, right?
it does, and if my memory serves, that was in the winter. Bears are hibernating in the
Mm-hmm.
winter, and if one wakes up from its torpor, I'm thinking it's going to see a child as a food source.
Right.
I would have loved to have been there and shown that child pictures. I wouldn't want to traumatize the poor kid, but I'd love pictures of bears, bison, and then go to like gorillas and
Mm-hmm.
monkeys
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah,
see
absolutely.
what did the bear look like, and I am the biggest hypocrite, or I used to be at one time, because whenever I heard woo, I ran for the hills. But I'm slowly beginning to think maybe there's something more to these things than, as you said perfectly, science uh, is unable to right now. Uh, I remember the North American Wood Ape Conservancy.
Sure.
Did you hear about tag number 7?
Oh yeah, no, that's a great report people can read on their website. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, and they didn't have all the data points, but they took it to biologists, and the
Hmm.
biologists just mirrored it. And I'm like, it was on the low end of data points. That amazes me that with all the history that it just are so shut off to it, except like Bindernagel, Meldrum, and either this is the greatest hoax of mankind. Patterson Gimlin would have nothing. You know, this has been going on for hundreds of years. The ancient pictographs of, I believe, a Bigfoot, a female, and a young one on a cave somewhere. And it seems like well, not every, but so many native tribes have names, have
Hmm.
stories. Some are good, some are bad.
Mm.
And I really like the old historical accounts of like from the 1800s. And I'm like, the cabal of people that are putting on the biggest hoax, so there's something to it. And I tend to go that there is something going on. And to me, there's enough evidence. I wish science would turn to it. But, I don't know if they don't know about these things and just uh, revealing that. I would love to know the reason if they're holding that secret, uh, why they're holding on to it.
It would be really interesting. I think most listeners are right there with you, but there's a few other there's another question that I did want to ask you. That muddy handprint is really interesting. Have you ever seen another handprint? Like, is this anything where you've studied to see if you can find anything similar to that, or?
Really interesting question. And I have not, I've seen nature shows like on chimps and things like that, or like gorillas, and I've noticed the hands. Part of that still really disturbs me. And I think that's maybe why to this day I still haven't researched that, because that handprint was just real eerie. The sheer size of it and the thumb placement was just wrong. That's the best word I could use. It was wrong. And yeah, part of me thinks they're abominations, and a bigger part of me is it's in the unknown category. Everything is speculation on these things. Even the Patterson Gimlin film, 100 people have 100 different views on it.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I think that makes it legit, and this is just my own opinion, is when Patty walks, there's like a couple frames where you see the impact tremor running from the calf to the thigh. And I don't see how a musculature impact tremor could be duplicated back in 67 when the best thing they had were Planet of the Apes.
It is one of those pieces of information that does get brought up quite a bit, and yeah, that is a whole conversation in itself. But my friend Jonathan easily brings that up a lot, where you know look at the muscles moving when it moves in that film. It's pretty incredible. Reminds me, when you saw the one move away down the hill and then into the holler and then into the brush, I believe. Did you notice
Mm-hmm.
any interesting movements that seemed unique while you were watching it, or was it just a little bit too far away to notice those details?
No, it was about 60 feet. So for me, it was really close, closer than I ever wanted to be. I didn't ask to see this. It did glide. It was like going down an escalator. It was so smooth. It was like a piece of silk in a light breeze, if that makes sense. It was very smooth and fluid, and it was like going down an escalator. And it wasn't fall, so the ground, there was no there was no tree debris to make noises, but I didn't hear a tree snap or anything. Didn't smell anything. But yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because I forgot to mention that. But yeah, it moved really smooth. It didn't move like the proportions were way off, but it didn't move like a human did. It was like on an escalator, if that makes sense.
It definitely does make sense. It's nothing that I've seen myself, but it fits with the other accounts I've heard. But the way that you described it with the piece of silk is just really helps you imagine it even more, especially for someone like myself who hasn't experienced that personally. But that is extremely interesting. And just also to verify, when you got back to the Dude Ranch, this was not discussed at all with anyone, correct?
Not at all. And I don't know. I think I blocked it out, because I honestly feel like within a day or two, I went about my typical 8-year-old stuff, doing things at a dude ranch in the woods. But I never said a word, because my first and biggest thought is, I'm going to get teased so bad. How would I even explain what happened? I don't know what, I believe, no, I know Sasquatch are out there. I've seen 2 of them, but I don't know what they are. And the first big thing is, I didn't want to be teased or ridiculed. And the second one, at the time, I don't think I would have been able to verbalize what I saw. And what gets me is how it's so amazing how the mind works, that you could totally block it off for years until some triggering event. And I don't like to use the word PTSD, because I feel like that's disrespectful to service members. But I think it was, a form of that. I think I had blocked it off, and for whatever reason, decades later, the particular event triggered it, and it came crashing back. Have you had a lot of people that have had that? Is that a rare thing with people that have encountered, or I haven't really heard anything from what I've listened to, which bothers me. But have you heard of that a couple times?
I definitely have talked to a few people where they have, gone under hypnosis, like hypnotherapy, and they've been able to remember more of what they experienced. I'm thinking of a conversation I just had. There are times where people, it's almost they go through so much trauma related that their mind suppresses it, and then something like hypnotherapy brings it back out, which is really interesting. Also, the other interesting thing is that the area you were, Sedona, is really known for some unique things, especially related to energy. And it almost makes me wonder if maybe just because you were in the area of Sedona that had something to do with it, but it's just, that's one of those, hypotheticals, really.
I do feel if I hit the Powerball, we are going to have a house in Georgia and in Sedona. It's the most beautiful place on the planet. But I do agree, and I felt it. I never had any paranormal experiences in Sedona, but I loved it so much because I just felt energized spiritually. Mm. And I'm a Christian, so I'm not I'm not into crystals or something like that. That's, if you are, that's fine, but there was something there for me that was a real positive place. Every time I went there, I just felt energized, and it stayed with me for a couple of weeks until I could go back up there.
It's extremely interesting. Yeah, there's definitely your the way your worldview definitely affects how you view these things that happen to you. That is, it's really an understatement, because some of these, when you have these encounters, there can be long lasting effects from them. And this is outside of, potential PTSD. But Michael, it has been just a pleasure talking to you today. Thank you for coming on the show and for sharing what you experienced at different times of your life over the years.
Yeah, thank you for letting me talk. It does feel good talking about it to this extent, because, well, I really don't talk about it anymore. But when I did, it was the Cliff Notes version, the single paragraph, 3-sentence form. So I appreciate you listening to me, because it does feel good talking about it. For whatever reason, it does. It's made me feel better today.
I'm glad to hear that. And if you ever, need any other or help with anything related to this topic, you feel free to reach out, and I'll do the most I can to try to help you. So, but thank you.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you for sending an email. And it's been fun talking to you today, Michael.
Me too. And take care and be safe out there. And if you want to see one, I truly hope you have an encounter that's benign and is a positive one.
Just want to take a few minutes to say thank you to you, all my listeners, for listening to the podcast. Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's a list: the Subtle Lake area of Oregon, Rainbow, Oregon, McKinsey Bridge area, Sweet Home, pretty much that entire area, the north part, if you get what I mean. I'll see you back next time, listeners. Sasquatch Summerfest this year, July 11th through the 12th. It's going to be fantastic. July 11th through 12th in Green Waters Park in Oak Ridge, Oregon. And listeners, if you're going to go, you can get a 2-day ticket for the cost of one if you use the code BFS, like Bigfoot Society, but BFS, and it'll get you some off your cost. Priscilla was nice enough to provide that for my listeners. So there you go. I look forward to seeing you there. So make sure you head over to www.sasquatchsummerfest.com and pick up your tickets today.